again, going all the way back to our first look at what a digital image is, and remember it's a sampling of what the whatever the original is into a grid. So that sampling has to see that the foot of the serif on the letter H goes here, or that or even if you want to not get that small, that H is 2 vertical lines with a crossbar, and you want to make sure that even in the tiniest font that's a footnote font underneath your text, that the digital image sees the space between the 2 vertical lines so that you can understand that that's an H. So there is a process where you can measure, you can go through your source material and measure identify the smallest unit of detail that you want to make sure captured, and basically plug that into a formula and arrive at a particular DPI. That's one way to determine resolution. Another is to think about broadly about a whole class of content type and pick a target size. And this means that your resolution might actually change a little bit. So, for example, when we digitize photographic prints from our archives, those prints actually come out to us a variety of different sizes. There's not a whole lot of great standardization to the size of the source material, but through some analysis and testing, and also, again, falling back on some of the benchmarks in the library community, rather than picking a particular resolution, we pick a particular target size. And what that means is we say that the images that we want to create from scanning should be at least 3,000 pixels on the long side. So that makes them pretty independent of however big the source is. We're really shooting for a certain size of the digital image. That can also be useful if you are trying to achieve a kind of consistency in your digital images and the size of your digital images, if that's important to you. So in that case, what we do is we always make sure that whatever the image is, we're scanning over 3,000 pixels on whatever long, and that phrase on the long side accounts for if your image is portrait or landscape orientation, whatever the long side happens to be. So that's a different approach to determining quality. Okay, so cropping. This is a decision which is not always an obvious one when you think about digitizing, until it's a question that you have arguments with each other about. So here's an example. And this goes back to that example of the illuminated manuscript. In what cases, when you're digitizing, is it important to see the page edge, and including possibly the gutter? And in what cases would you just want to crop to what we call the text block for a book usually? Well, here, if we crop to the text block, what do we do about this notation up there? So, yeah, that can be a not simple decision to make. What we tend to do is fall back on the information or artifact question again, and things that fall further on the information spectrum will tend to feel a lot more comfortable cropping, because what we're really interested in is this text is information, not so much whatever somebody happened. I mean, and again, this is maybe rare that somebody made an annotation. But if it were really informational, we actually wouldn't care what a particular person who had this copy wrote on it. We want the information. If it's an artifact, if this is somebody who's famous and this is their copy of this book, all of a sudden their scribbles become extremely important and significant. And the value of that is not so much informational, but it's the artifact. This is so-and-so's personal copy in which they scrawled all kinds of notes, and the notes are really what's as interesting, if not more, than whatever the information content of the text is. So that's a decision point. Here's another one. You scan both sides of something. Okay, that's pretty straightforward in a book. Although some books have, the variety of books is unbelievable, by the way. So scanning historic books, books nowadays are pretty similar the way that they're produced, but we've just seen all kinds of things. You think you know what a book is until you scan historic books, because you get multiple books just bound together. You get all kinds of fold-outs and illustrations that have different kinds of transparent leaves in between them. There's even, I'm sure there are many more strange things that I'm forgetting, but a whole run of blank pages maybe in the back of a book. Do you scan all those blank pages? Do you skip them? How do you decide whether they should be included or not? This is particularly important with archival material, manuscripts. So imagine a handwritten journal, or imagine just letters, so loose leaf manuscript letters. If there's nothing written on the back, when do you scan it? When don't you scan it? What if there's just a little scroll on the back? What if it's just one name on the back of a manuscript page? Or something that looks like a little inconsequential note that somebody made to themselves, or a doodle, just a little drawing. Scan both sides? Are you putting it in your scanning operator's judgment to have to determine whether something is important enough to scan the back? Because that can be quite tricky as well. Or do you just make it a particular policy? How do you define the policy? Do you scan something on the back if there's anything? Otherwise you don't scan it? Do you scan the back of everything, regardless if it's blank or not? Again, for archives in particular, this is a real consideration in how you do digitization. There's not a pat answer to that. It's a question that you need to go back to thinking about what your project is. Along the same lines, a lot of our content, historical content, has blank or missing pages. So once again, do you identify it? We tend to do it in our operations. So we have a policy where when there's a missing page, rather than skipping it, you can't skip it. Rather than going through and just not making any indication, we make an indication. So we have these placeholder cards that say missing page. In some cases, there are, we know from the page numbering that there may be 20 or 30 missing pages. So sometimes we have a little card here that says missing pages, and then it says the next 20 are missing. So part of that is, again, wanting to represent the integrity of the thing that we're scanning, and also just to protect ourselves from the idea that, hey, you guys made a mistake, you forgot something.